March 7, 1942. The Barents Sea, north of the Arctic Circle. The sun is a weak, pale disk hovering low on the horizon, casting the Norwegian coast in a perpetual twilight of blue and gray. A freezing gale whips across the water, driving sheets of stinging spray over the convoy escorts. The air is so cold, it hurts to breathe. Inside the cramped, ice-coated lookout station high on the main mast of HMS Rodney, able seaman Tommy Davies shivers, his breath misting instantly inside his thick hood. His job is monotony punctuated by terror. Watch the horizon for enemy aircraft, submarines, or the ultimate threat, the Tirpitz. The Rodney is an ugly, powerful ship. Her unique silhouette, with all three massive 16-inch gun turrets clustered forward, makes her look like a beast with a single colossal head, her stern oddly empty. She is slow, constrained by the Washington Naval Treaty that limited her size, but she is heavily armored and carries the heaviest punch in the Royal Navy. Davies, a sailor hardened by 3 years of Arctic duty, knows the stakes. They are protecting Convoy PQ-12, a lifeline of tanks, trucks, and ammunition bound from Murmansk, a lifeline the Germans are determined to sever. The tension on the bridge is palpable, filtered down to Davies through the radio chatter. Captain Frederick Jellicoe, not a direct relation to the World War I admiral, but a name that carried weight in the RN, trusts his ship's 14 inches of armor and her 9 16-inch Mark I guns, but he worries about speed. At a maximum of 23 knots, the Rodney is a brawler, not a sprinter. If the Tirpitz, the Bismarck's sister ship, breaks out of the fjords, she will dictate the terms of engagement. The German giant is reportedly capable of 30 knots and boasts 320 millimeters of main belt armor. She can stand off at extreme range, use her superior fire control and Fumo 27 radar to achieve precision, and simply outrun any attempt by the Rodney to close for a decisive slugging match. Miles away, hidden in the labyrinthine maze of the Norwegian fjords, the Tirpitz is preparing to move. Her vast hull, protected by layered steel and anti-torpedo nets, is a symbol of German power. Kapitan Suze Robert Schulze, aboard the Tirpitz, receives the reconnaissance report. The convoy is poorly screened. A capital ship is present, the Rodney. Schulze knows the British ship's reputation, particularly its role in the destruction of the Bismarck. But he also knows her weaknesses, her low speed and vulnerability when outmaneuvered. Schulze's orders are clear: disrupt the convoy and avoid unnecessary risk. His ship's greatest asset is its existence, the fleet in being. However, this presents a perfect, high-risk opportunity. A single successful sortie could devastate the supply line and further demoralize the Allies. He orders flank speed for a planned intercept. The German ship slips out of her protected cove, the roar of her massive turbines quickly fading as she heads into the Arctic gloom. The ultimate duel, a clash of two opposing design philosophies, the German pursuit of layered resilience and range versus the British commitment to concentrated shock and close-quarters brawl, is suddenly, terrifyingly becoming a reality. The silent shadow war is about to erupt in fire and steel. Tommy Davies, shivering in the crow's nest, is still scanning a blank horizon, unaware that the ghost he hunts is now steaming directly towards him. The tension on the bridge of HMS Rodney is now drawn tight. Hydrophone operators report faint, high-frequency propeller noise, too fast for a U-boat, too steady for a merchantman. Intelligence confirms the terrible possibility that Tirpitz is out. Captain Jellicoe leans over the plotting table, his gaze fixed on the map. He is facing the ultimate warship dichotomy, a clash of design philosophies dictated by 2 decades of naval policy. The Rodney is the product of constraint. The 1922 Washington Naval Treaty forced her designers to maximize power while staying below the 35,000-ton displacement limit. The result was the radical all-forward main battery. Jellicoe trusts those 9 16-inch Mark I guns, the heaviest striking power available to the Royal Navy. Each shell weighs over 929 kilograms, or 2,048 pounds, carrying an enormous kinetic energy designed to overwhelm anything it hits. The philosophy was simple: put all the eggs in one basket, concentrate the force, and deliver a knockout blow. The Rodney was a specialized brawler, optimized for a decisive close-range engagement where the sheer weight of her broadside could defeat even the thickest armor. However, this concentration came at a brutal cost: speed and flexibility. The Rodney's maximum of 23 knots means she cannot choose the distance of the fight. She is forced to close the range, presenting her smallest target profile to the enemy and gambling that her thickest frontal armor will hold up under the initial German barrage. Her 14 inches of armor and her all-or-nothing protection scheme, thick armor over the core citadel, thin armor elsewhere, means she must survive the opening storm. Across the water, the Tirpitz is the ultimate expression of unconstrained German naval might. Kapitan Schultz's ship is a technological marvel, born of defiance to the very treaties that shackled the Rodney. The German design prioritized survivability and operational range. Her 320mm main armor belt is slightly thinner than the Rodney's maximum, but it is backed by an intricate layered protection system that makes her incredibly resilient to damage. The German doctrine favored graduated protection, designed to keep the ship fighting even after multiple hits, a philosophy far different from the British all-or-nothing. The Tirpitz's 8 15-inch SKC-34 guns fire a high-velocity but lighter shell. Schultz relies on the German reputation for precision. Their Fumo 27 radar and advanced optical fire control systems give them the decisive advantage at long range, over 25,000 meters. The German tactical plan is to use their 30-knot speed to maintain distance, exploit the Rodney's slow approach, and cripple the British battleship with accurate repeated salvos before the heavier 16-inch shells can enter their effective armor-piercing range. The Tirpitz is designed to inflict maximum damage while remaining impervious to return fire, to be an untouchable artillery platform. Jellicoe knows the terrifying truth: the Tirpitz can fire more accurate, more frequent salvos from a distance, forcing the Rodney to take damage while struggling to close the gap. The Rodney must endure the initial punishing phase of the engagement. But Jellicoe carries one crucial piece of asymmetric warfare: the 4 submerged 24.5-inch torpedo tubes, a weapon almost unheard of on a modern battleship, a close-range, high-risk killer. If the Rodney can survive the long-range barrage and force the Tirpitz into a tight turn, those torpedoes offer a definitive game-ending knockout blow that no German commander would ever anticipate from a ship of the line. The fate of Convoy PQ-12 hangs on the Rodney's ability to survive the run-in and bring the ultimate shock weapon to bear. The distance is closing, and the German radar is now painting a clear target. The German Fumo 27 radar is now giving Kapitan Schultz aboard the Tirpitz precise, continuous range data on the approaching HMS Rodney. The range is reported at 27,000 meters, just under 15 nautical miles. This is the Tirpitz's perfect engagement envelope: extreme range, where the Rodney's gunnery will be hampered by the plunging trajectory of her shells and the German ship's thick armored deck. Schultz smiles grimly. The slow British brawler has played into his hands. Schultz gives the order to engage. The German doctrine dictates a precision ranging shot, followed immediately by a full correcting salvo. The target is the Rodney's exposed superstructure and forward deck. Cripple the fire control, blind the ship, and then hammer the waterline. Aboard the Rodney, Captain Jellicoe stands impassively on the bridge. He has chosen to maintain a head-on course, presenting the smallest possible target profile to the enemy, relying on the thickness of his frontal armor to absorb the inevitable hits. The German shells, fired from an enormous distance, are now plummeting from the sky. The German ranging shot is accurate, close enough to terrify, but non-critical. Schultz orders the correction and fires a full 8-gun broadside. The second salvo is devastatingly precise. 3 15-inch shells strike the Rodney. One glances off the forward A-turret with a deafening screech of ripping metal. It fails to penetrate the primary armor, but fuses the external sighting port. The second shell impacts the unarmored bridge structure, detonating in a shower of steel fragments, destroying the forward rangefinder and killing several men. The third shell hits the side hull plating near the waterline, just outside the main armored belt. Damage report: critical to fire control. The Rodney has sustained heavy damage to her vital fire control systems. Her radar is immediately knocked out, and her main rangefinder is gone. She is now fighting partially blind, relying on outdated visual plotting and the sheer aggression of her commander. Her speed is briefly shaken, but the main machinery remains intact. The all-or-nothing armor has done its job on the core citadel. The range has now closed to 22,000 meters. Jellicoe knows he has survived the worst of the long-range pounding, but the cost is high. He refuses to turn and run, which would expose his more vulnerable side armor. He maintains the charge. The Rodney must answer. Ainsworth, Jellicoe calls to the gunnery officer. Use the secondary directors. Fire on my marks. Target the hull midships. 9 guns, full salvo. The Rodney fires her first terrible salvo. The sound of the 9 16-inch guns is not a sharp crack, but a seismic continuous thunder, a wave of pure acoustic energy that dwarfs the German guns. The ship stops dead in the water for a moment, recoiling heavily. The immense 2,048-pound shells begin their journey. The fight is now entering the mid-range, the zone where the Rodney's heavier shell mass begins to negate the German armor advantage. The crucial moment is seconds away. The Rodney's 9 16-inch shells streak through the air, their trajectory flatter now, heading toward the heart of the Tirpitz. Aboard the German giant, Captain Schultz sees the monstrous geysers of water erupting around his ship. The British shells arrive in a tighter group than expected, testament to the Rodney's veteran gunnery crew and the necessity of firing on a closing target. 3 shells stripe the Tirpitz hull. 2 slam directly into the 320mm main armor belt amidships. The third hits the main armored deck. The sheer kinetic energy of the 16-inch rounds is staggering. The shells fail to achieve a full citadel penetration, but the localized force is catastrophic. The impact on the main belt rips plating away from the surrounding anti-torpedo bulge and warps the structural integrity of the hull section. The internal bulkheads, designed to absorb smaller hits, buckle violently. Crippling structural damage. Inside the Tirpitz, damage control reports massive flooding in several external compartments and, critically, catastrophic shock damage to the engine rooms. The immense vibration from the hits causes a cascading failure of the auxiliary machinery and severely compromises the main steering gear. The Tirpitz's speed drops sharply, immediately plunging to an estimated 18 knots. The German giant, designed to run and fight, is now crippled and unable to maintain distance. Schultz, seeing his speed advantage evaporate, reacts with fury. All secondary directors to the fire. Full 8-gun broadside. Target the superstructure. Make them pay for this. The German response is accurate, a desperate bid to blind and cripple the approaching Rodney. 4 15-inch shells strike the Rodney's forward superstructure, which is only lightly armored in comparison to her citadel. The hits are devastating to her upper works, shredding radio antennas, destroying the aft fire control director, and starting multiple fierce fires in the accommodation and medical bays. The range is now 16,000 meters. Both ships are savaged, but the Rodney's main gun battery remains operational, encased in its massive armor plating. The Tirpitz is losing speed and maneuverability. The duel has been forced into the Rodney's ideal close-quarters range. Captain Jellicoe sees the billowing smoke and the clear list in the Tirpitz's profile. The German battleship is slowed, struggling to maintain her course, the perfect target. Jellicoe makes the most aggressive high-risk command of the entire engagement. He orders a slight turn to port, setting the stage not just for another salvo, but for the deployment of the one weapon the Germans will never anticipate. Aim for the waterline, full salvo, then prepared tubes 1 and 3. We are going in. The Rodney's second 9-gun salvo is loaded, primed, and ready to fire. The hammer is about to fall again, and this time the blow will be followed by the ultimate close-range killer. The fate of the Tirpitz now rests on whether she can endure the Rodney's final, terrifying charge. The range is now a terrifying 14,000 meters, and the Rodney has turned slightly to port. This slight movement is the crucial feint. It allows her to fire her full 9-gun broadside on an adjusted target, while simultaneously bringing the starboard submerged 24.5-inch torpedo tubes to bear on the Tirpitz. Second salvo, fire. Jellicoe's voice is strained but clear over the battle circuits. The Rodney's second full salvo hits the crippled German battleship like a geologic event. 4 shells impact the Tirpitz. 1 strikes the aft main turret barbette, failing to penetrate but fusing the turret ring, immobilizing the guns. 3 strike the waterline where the plating is already warped by the initial hits. The immense shock of the 2,048-pound shells finally begins to tear apart the internal structure. Catastrophic damage to hull integrity. The Tirpitz is now taking on thousands of tons of water. Her list increases rapidly to starboard. Her speed has dropped to a shambling 10 knots, and she is turning slowly in a wide, uncontrolled arc. The damage to her rudder and engines is complete. She is dead in the water, a floating, wounded fortress. Capitan Schulze sees the futility of resistance. His ship is silenced and sinking, but the final devastating insult is yet to come. The Rodney is now at 10,000 meters. Commander Ainsworth, eyes fixed on the listing German hull, gives the final deadly order. This is the moment of truth for the ship's forgotten weapon. Tubes 1 and 3, set depth 3 meters, bearing, mark, fire. The Tirpitz crew, focused on damage control and the crippling shell impacts, are utterly unprepared for the torpedo threat. No one on the German bridge is looking for the wake of a torpedo launched by a battleship. The torpedoes, each carrying a heavy warhead, travel the short distance through the choppy seas. Mortal blow. The torpedoes strike the already breached hull, beneath the 320mm main armor belt where the layered anti-torpedo system is compromised. The cumulative damage, shell strikes above the waterline, and now 2 massive torpedo hits below, is too much. The flooding becomes uncontrollable, overwhelming the pump systems. Aboard the Tirpitz, the final alarms sound, high, continuous, and desperate. The ship lists further, the cold North Sea now pouring into her main deck openings. Capitan Schulze orders the crew to abandon ship, watching the massive gray superstructure tilt toward the churning water. The Tirpitz, the unconstrained technological masterpiece, is defeated not by superior range, but by concentrated shock and tactical surprise. Aboard the Rodney, the guns fall silent. The crew, battered, deafened, and surrounded by smoke and the stench of burnt metal, watch the German giant disappear into the frigid sea. The slow, treaty-bound brawler has delivered the final blow against the technological sentinel. But the sheer scale of the confrontation and the cost to the Rodney raises vital questions about the future of naval design and the true winner of the strategic war. The HMS Rodney, heavily listing, smoke pouring from her damaged superstructure, is the last capital ship afloat. The Tirpitz is gone, her loss a strategic and morale disaster for the Kriegsmarine. But the Rodney is critically damaged, a Pyrrhic victory born of tactical genius and luck. The analytical verdict confirms the success of the Rodney strategy: close the range, concentrate fire, and utilize the unexpected. The Tirpitz's vast armor and speed were rendered obsolete by the environment and the Rodney's relentless push. Key analytical takeaways. 1. Kinetic versus potential energy. The Rodney's 16-inch shell won the artillery duel not through penetration, but through massive kinetic shock. The initial 3 hits disabled the Tirpitz's propulsion, which was the German ship's single greatest defense. In a surface engagement, a crippled, stationary target is a dead target. The torpedo anomaly. The 24.5-inch torpedo was the ultimate asymmetrical weapon. It delivered a blow below the waterline where the already compromised armor plating offered little resistance, directly contravening standard naval doctrine of the time. This highlights the vulnerability of the Tirpitz when operating without its mandatory destroyer screen, a common reality in the war of attrition. The flaw of perfection. The Tirpitz's high complexity was her undoing. The precise engine and steering gear systems were susceptible to the wide-area structural shock of the 16-inch shells. The Rodney, though older, was mechanically simpler and tougher to disable entirely. The German drive for technical perfection created an operational fragility that was exploited by the British focus on raw hitting power. Aboard the Rodney, Captain Jellicoe surveys the damage. His forward rangefinders are gone, his superstructure is gutted, and his ship is taking on water. While the Tirpitz is sunk, the Rodney is no longer combat effective and must immediately return to a major shipyard for months of repair. The cost of victory is enormous. The immediate strategic effect is the opening of the Arctic route. The fleet in being is eliminated, freeing up dozens of Allied capital ships and escorts to other theaters, accelerating the flow of aid to the Soviet Union. This is the Rodney's true long-term legacy. She eliminated the greatest bottleneck in the Northern War. However, the cost to the Rodney underscores the strategic reality. The Tirpitz, even in defeat, absorbed enough punishment to functionally remove her rival from the war for a significant period. Had the Rodney encountered any other serious threat on her long limping journey home, she would have likely been lost. The duel was decisive, but the ultimate winner of the naval war was already flying overhead. The battleship era was truly over. The duel serves as the last great testament to the sheer destructive power of the heavy gun, a spectacular but terminal confrontation in the face of the emerging threat of air power. If you love classic comparison battles and in-depth military history analysis like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't miss out. Go ahead and subscribe now, and we'll see you for the next battle.